Today, guys, we're back with my series called Fighting with Your Physique, where we look at your body style and we assess what the best way to compete is. Now, today's episode is all about those guys who are not as strong as the average guy in your division. But the episode is applicable to pretty much everybody because there's always somebody else out there who's a little bit stronger than you. And when they're a little bit stronger than you, you want to use the tips from this episode today. But this one is really catered for the guys more like myself, who just because I'm taller, a little bit more wiry, I'm not the strongest guy in the division. So how do we go about defeating other people? What strategies can we use to defeat guys who have a little bit more strength, a little bit more power than us? That's what today's episode is all about, guys. Alright guys, fighting with your physique, so important to develop your own style and become the best version of yourself. Now, when I came back from Thailand and I'd been training with Buakaw for a little bit, I wanted to fight my fight like this. I wanted to throw lots of round kicks with like him. I wanted to engage in the clinch and huck people around just like him. Now, my post-Thailand fight was a North American amateur title. I still won every round, but then looking back at the video, I went, man, I should have knocked that guy out. But just because I was fighting the wrong style for my body, I ended up getting the decision instead. So it's very easy to see other people want to fight like them, but what we want to dial in today is how you fight your best fight with your body type, with the attributes you have. And guys, if today's episode doesn't really suit you, you're not really interested in learning about if you're not as strong as your opponents, well, there's lots of other videos down below where we talk about being tall and lean, short and stocky, extra strong. The list just goes on, so you guys can check out one of those down below. But right now, guys, I want to get into all the details about tips you can use to fight if you are not as strong as your opponents. You don't want to come in and engage in a brawl. You don't want to end up out here swinging away trying to land shot for shot because you might not have that power to make people fall as soon as you touch them. So the first tip today, when we're talking about somebody who's not as strong, I use this all the time. I work on my speed. If I am not going to put people down with single shots, I am definitely going to be able to land quick flurries on them and then exit. That speed is so important. You guys need to practice when you're hitting, putting together combinations, letting the hands fly from one to the other, and then getting that quick exit. So from out here, I can set up, then I can move in and get right back out. Speed, so important for somebody who's not going to be absolutely the strongest guy in the division. Next up, I want to talk about head movement, and not so much defensively, like we see it coming and we react accordingly, but more when you throw, you get your head off the center line. This is especially important if you're going to work that last point that I just mentioned, where we throw really fast hands. We want to work on that speed. I don't want to just walk in with my head straight up and hope I don't get hit. I want to enter with my head off the center line and then from there follow up once the guy shells, because maybe I blind his vision and then I start letting the hands go, and with that speed I'm able to make him really shell up. But the head movement at the beginning is the most important thing. If you're the fighter who doesn't hit as hard, you're not as strong, you're a little bit physically weaker, head off the center line even multiple times in the middle of a combination is very important. Now next, guys, I want to talk about setups. We want to be very, very accurate, very precise, and very smart with our technique. So we don't want to just jump in and hope something lands, because as I'm throwing, it gives him the opportunity for counters. And also, if I don't hit as hard, if I'm not as strong, I need to make this guy respect me. If I come in and I'm always pitter-pattering off his arms, he's not going to respect me. But if half the shots I land are clipping him, now he's going to go, oh shoot, I actually have to ease on back. So using setup, something like, I land to the body. I land to the body, I touch his head, I land to the body, then I fake down low like I'm going to go to the body, but I actually come over top with the overhand. Or I jab, I move around, I stick that jab, then I fake out halfway, and then I come with the hook. We can use these for our hands, we can use them for our knees, we can use them for our feet. Set the front kick up, land multiple times, make this guy uncomfortable with it, and then transition around to the head. There's so many ways to set up, and it's something you absolutely have to do. Now next, I want to talk about which areas do we target. If we run forward, just like I was kind of saying on the last point, and we just throw our shots blindly, we don't really know what we're hitting, we're not taking full advantage of the fact that this is going to be a weak area. And right in there, in the upper abs, is going to be a weak area as well. So instead of just throwing, hoping I hit something that's a little bit weaker on my opponent, I really want to target the areas that are more susceptible to hurting this guy. Because I'm not one of those guys who can just throw a shot and people drop, doesn't matter where I touch them. I have to be very precise. So I have to hit the jaw, I have to find the weak spot in the stomach. And one of the ways that I like to do this with my training buddy is I have him come and throw shots at me. I block, block, block. He leaves his jaw open as he's throwing, and then I come in and I target very light. I just go pip. So if he's throwing at me, I block, I block, I block, and then I touch. I block, I block, I block, I touch. I roll under, I touch. And I'm always going for that chin. And this can be done to the body, as I mentioned. It can be done to the head. It can also be done to the legs. Don't just throw to one area of the leg and hope it's the weakest spot. Figure out, okay, am I going to go really high, close to the hip, weak area? Am I going to go just above the knee, also a weak area? All right, guys, I want to move on and I want to talk about dictating the fight pace. If you are the fighter who is not as strong, you want to be able to make sure you're controlling the pace and it's going at the speed you want. Sometimes that means, like for me, I'm a little bit lighter, but that means that I like to keep a pace on the guys. I like to make them work. But if I have somebody who's coming out and they're so much stronger than me that they're trying to knock me out in the first 30 seconds, then I need to be able to dictate the pace by maybe angling off and moving, throwing my shots and moving. You need to make that assessment fairly early on, or maybe through fight research, watching your opponent, and then deciding, okay, this is the way we're going to dictate the pace of this fight at different time periods of the fight, sometimes even. Beginning, we're going to be very evasive. Then in the middle, we're going to start bringing the pace up on him. Try and tire him down. Make sure his hard shots don't have the steam that they did at the beginning. Control the fight pace. This can be done for any body style, but very important to do when you're somebody who's not the strongest in the division. And let's move on to our next point, but it's perfect for tying into the previous one, and we're talking about footwork. Footwork is so important. It can be tiny little adjustments, little micro adjustments. My feet are just doing the little shuffles, or it could just be full on bouncing, moving around, making this guy try and chase me. But footwork is going to be very key. I 100% do not just want to stand here with the guy who's stronger than me. I do this quite often, but throughout the years, my body's gotten very strong, very adept to dealing with punishment. But in the early parts of my career, you guys haven't seen too much of my early amateur footage, but in the beginning, I was moving a lot. I was always trying to make it really hard for people to tag me, and that came from the footwork. And the last thing I want to touch on today is if you don't have that physical strength, you're not a specimen who just touches people and they drop. Well, that's fine. But what you do need to do is figure out what your strength is. You just need to figure it out. Is it speed? Is it being elusive? Is it your timing? Is it your counters? Is it your ability to set up techniques and land them? There's so many things that can be your strength. Don't get yourself upset with the fact that you're not the strongest, you're not the fastest, you're not the most flexible, the most agile. There are very few fighters who are the best at everything. What you need to do is figure out what you are best at and try to take the fight there. This whole series is about fighting with your physique, where we talk about finding your strength and then recognizing what your weaknesses are and how you can become a little bit better by making small little adjustments. So guys, that about covers it for my episode today, where we're talking about the fighters who are not the strongest. I really like this one because guys like Dominic Cruz and Lomachenko have proved time and time again, even though they're not obviously the strongest guys in the division, they can still be super successful and can still be world champions. All right guys, if you enjoyed the episode, please give it a like. If you haven't already, get subscribed. Throw down in the comments below which body type you want me to cover next in this series. Train hard, guys, and I'll see you back here soon for another video.